What's up, guys? Welcome to the Endless Endeavor podcast with me, Greg Anderson. This is going to be episode number 18, and I'm joined by one of my new Jiu Jitsu students. Her name is Christy Campbell. She's a veteran, a mom, and a health and nutrition coach, and just all around cool person. And so I figured it'd be cool to have her on the podcast, let her talk about her background, where she came from, and how she got into coaching and what she's doing now. And you're the first female on the podcast.
I feel super honored.
Pretty awesome, huh?
I do.
So yeah, just like we said, just take it from the beginning and kind of give everyone a background of who you are, where you came from, and we'll take it from there.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to be here. Honestly, I think us trading before the podcast was a good idea because now my face is smashed in a little bit. I have no nerves anymore. You just can't feel anything. So my name's Christy. I grew up on the Eastern Shore, Maryland. So I don't know if anybody's been over there, but it's like right below Delaware. And there's a place called Ocean City, and I grew up right there. Chicken farm country, like Purdue chicken land. And I went into the Navy right out of high school. I went to the Naval Academy. It was my dream, honestly, as long as I can remember. I wanted to be in the service.
Oh, you were an officer. I don't think I knew that. We can't be friends anymore.
Well, I'm already here, so it's too late.
It's a done deal.
It's too late. I catfished you. But yeah, as long as I can remember, I wanted to be in the military. I had, those sort of like vibes that happen when I remember going to like Jump Rope for Heart, and they would play the national anthem, and I would get all choked up, and I was like, I would read books about the Civil War, and I was just like, I got to be there. I can't not. And so for really as long as I could remember, I wanted to be in the Navy and wanted to be in the service. And so I was a competitive girl, and that was what felt like something that pushed me, was to get into the academy. And so that's why I went there. So yeah, there was one stop along the way because I applied to the Naval Academy out of high school, but Maryland's super competitive to get in. They kind of do it like Congress, where only each state gets a certain number of people. And so when I applied, I actually got in, but they didn't have a spot for me. So they sent me all the way to New Mexico to go to New Mexico Military Institute in Roswell, New Mexico. And so I did 1 year of Army, like JROTC, or not JRTC, Army ROTC out in Roswell, New Mexico with the aliens first.
and with the plan being in mind of once that year's up, you're going to the Naval Academy?
Yeah, it was kind of like a special program they had.
So you weren't active duty then?
No, but they basically held your spot. So it was a special program where they were like, you're in, we just ran out of spots. So go do this prep school, stay out of trouble, and we promise you a spot next year. And kind of the way it worked is if your family had money, then you could pick like a prep school. So a lot of people went to some of the prep schools on the East Coast. My family didn't have very much money. I grew up in a single mom situation. And so because I didn't get to pick, they picked for me, and they paid for me to go to New Mexico Military Institute out in Roswell. So
did they give you, like, were you living in barracks or any kind of allowance for housing or food or anything?
At New Mexico Military Institute, it was like military boarding school.
Okay.
So you lived like in these barracks type arrangements. It was a strange year, to be honest, because it was a mixture of kids who were there for the 2-year Army commissioning program. So they had a 2-year program, which was different than like 4-year ROTC.
Yeah.
So they were there for that. Then they had athletes who were there because it was NJCAA school. And so they had kids go there who were on their way to big time schools for football, basketball, those kind of things. And then they had high schoolers who were sent to military boarding school. And so you had this like strange mixture of people, and the fact that it was isolated made it even crazier.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
So you were what, 18 when you were there?
17.
17. And all the kids that were there were what, 16 to 21 or something?
Yeah, ballpark. So it was like crazy town.
So then you did a year there, and then back to the Naval Academy?
Yep.
And where's that at again?
In Annapolis, Maryland.
That's right. I should know that. Shame on me.
So I think part of my story that we'll probably get into actually started at New Mexico Military Institute, which is when I got out there. I was always a soccer player growing up. So when I got out there, I said, like, I want to try out for your soccer team. There's a college, sports program. I'm in. And I said, you know, where's your women's soccer tryouts? And they're like, we don't have a women's soccer team. All we have is a women's volleyball team. And it's our first year ever. And we have 12 full ride scholarship volleyball players that are here on their way to Division I schools, riding out a year at NJCAA.
Is that the nice way of saying you don't have a chance?
Well, so the funny thing is the sports director was so excited about this new program. And I was there early. He was like, go try out. They'll be, you know, it's open tryouts. I think he just wanted to like pad the tryouts because it was the first year.
Why not?
So I went out there. I have never played volleyball ever. And I'm 5'4". You probably can't, you know, you can't tell. I'm 5'4". Never played volleyball in my life. I was a soccer player. And so I went out and I don't know what happened. I think I must have thrown myself on the ground and like hustled real hard or whatever. And I made the team as a walk-on. And that was such a strange experience for me because I was terrible at volleyball. And there was these 13 like stunning, tall, like 6 foot tall, like beautiful women who'd played volleyball their entire life. And they were like, who is this, you know, chump? Why is she here? And I think the coach took me just off athleticism and figured I would be a good practice person, someone who just hustles. And you know, I have honest to God, I have no idea how I made that team. And so I ended up playing volleyball that year, at least being a part of the practice team.
That's pretty awesome.
That whole year. And honestly, the same thing, this brings me to like the part of the story that I think will lead into some of our other conversation. The next year I went to the Naval Academy, the same thing happened. I went to the soccer team and I was like, hey, I'd like to try out for the soccer team. Well, they didn't take walk-ons. So I was like, well, now what? And I wanted to do something. You have to do some kind of sport or extracurricular at the academy. It's just like part of the deal.
Oh, that's a requirement. Mm-hmm. Good, it should be.
And so I went to the volleyball coach and I was like, can I try out for the volleyball team? Again, this is Division I. I'm terrible at volleyball. Even after 1 year of playing, I was still so bad. And he was like, yeah, you can try out. I mean, we take walk-ons, come on out. And I went and tried out and somehow I made it. And I don't know, again, like...
I don't think... You're probably not giving yourself the credit you deserve.
I'm not good at volleyball, Greg. I'm telling you, if any of the people who played volleyball with me in college are listening to this, they would swear to you. I got sent to the corner on more than one occasion just to go practice serving overhand and like drill the ball into the corner. I think it was like the Rudy factor, to be honest. I feel like I was, you know, when the real players were in and they weren't trying, coach would be like, get out, at least Christy will try. And she'd like throw me in for 15 seconds, pray that nobody hits me the ball, and then pull me back out. But anyways, I played 1 year at the Naval Academy of Division I volleyball, but then I hurt my knee.
Oh, okay. That was my next question.
Yes. And so I think that's kind of what started for me. And what's funny is that initial knee injury, it was just swelling. It wasn't like a catastrophic situation like you see on the NFL game or something like that. It wasn't like that. My knee just swelled up a lot. And at this point I was active duty. So I was, 18, and this was my first year in the Navy. Even though I was still in training, we were seen by, Navy doctors. We couldn't go out in town. We were completely owned, by the military. So
is that, I guess, talk me through that a little bit, because I mean, I'm very familiar with military lifestyle, but I don't have any friends that went through like the Army's academy or the Naval Academy. So you're locked down the entire time?
It gets less locked down the longer you're there. So your first year, so at the academy, the Naval Academy, it's called like your plebe year. Mm-hmm. You can't wear civilian clothes ever, like not at all. So it's almost just like an extended boot camp or extended basic training. Huh? Yeah, you're not allowed to talk to people in the hallways. You have to like run everywhere. You have to, have a certain, you can't have any friendships with the upperclassmen. You're basically just sort of like a nobody for that whole year. But you can have relationships, like friendships, and your company mates, the people who are also freshmen with you, are your like homies. But like everybody else is not allowed. And is it like full time, or is it like a normal school year, like 9 months and then you have summers off? Or it's full time, and it's pretty aggressive, like academically. And so I think that's probably what it's known for, is like going for really kind of like a high volume of class load. Like you take 18 to 22 credit hours always. Mm-hmm. You have to do an extracurricular, you have to do leadership stuff. And then over the summer, you usually get like 1 6-week block off and the rest you're training.
Okay.
You're doing like some sort of training.
So then you do, I mean, at 4 years and then you're commissioned.
Yep.
And then how long are you owned by the Navy after that?
It depends on what job you do. So for me, I signed up to be a surface warfare officer, so I would owed them 5 years.
Okay.
But if you're a pilot, it's longer because they don't start the clock until after you finish flight school.
Got it.
So it just depends on the person.
So, I mean, dude, if you started, your enlistment time starts as soon as the Naval Academy starts. And then you got 5 years after that. So when you left, basically your first enlistment, you're halfway to retirement.
9 years in, but they don't count the academy time.
Oh, they don't count the academy time?
No, so you're active duty, but they
Shame
don't count
on
it.
them.
No, they don't count it. And so it's funny, my husband actually, he entered the Naval Academy. That's where we met, but he came a different way.
Was he an upperclassman?
No.
Okay.
That's really funny.
Just checking. Okay.
What he was 22 and I was 18. And that's because there's a few people who come to the Naval Academy not out of high school. They come from the fleet. So he was enlisted and had been deployed twice already. And then he applied and kind of got in as a special thing because that doesn't happen very often.
The Army has that too. It's called green to gold.
So he came in after being enlisted. He was an E5 and then went into the Naval Academy. So when we met, although he was not an upperclassman, I still got to introduce my mom to my 22-year-old sailor boyfriend who'd been deployed twice already.
She was thrilled.
Yes, exactly.
So let me ask you this. If he was enlisted and then went to the academy, and I mean, he's still in, does that time count towards retirement if you do it that way?
I don't think so. His enlisted time counts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he has a break in service.
He does.
Even though he was
I know. It doesn't
living
make
at
sense.
a military academy.
Yes, it doesn't make sense.
I think everybody that's listening that's ever spent more than 10 minutes in the military knows a lot of the military doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So then when you graduated the academy, and what did you say your MOS was?
I was a surface warfare officer, so I went and drove ships basically.
Okay. Give me more, break that down a little bit more.
It's exactly as it sounds. So I also recognize that, there's different kinds of commissioning programs and like, there's also a different kind of expectation of, what officers bring to the table. Because for me, I didn't come to the Navy with any Navy experience, right? Like I had schooling and training and then all of a sudden I'm a commissioned officer. And so that was, I think it's good when you know you're ready to work and you're ready to learn. And so that was really, I feel like I went into it with that mindset. Like I knew I was smart, but I didn't have any like beliefs that I knew the Navy,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what I was commissioned as was an officer who would be in charge of, both enlisted on ships, but then actually driving the ship. That's what like the surface warfare officers do. So,
that actually sounds better. That sounds cool.
I'm not trying to knock it. I don't know like the scope of the listeners of this podcast. So if anybody's listening and they're a surface warfare officer, just like know that it kind of sucks. I mean, it does, and I think most surface warfare people would tell you that.
Why is it just boring, long hours, or?
You know how certain communities in each military branch just have a different vibe?
For sure.
I think in the surface warfare community, it was a particularly like dog eat dog, like eat your own kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it was not a great lifestyle because it was hard. Like, I mean, all military is hard in its different way. But like, for example, we would stand 6 on, 12 off. 6 on watch, 12 off. But then when you were off watch, so like the 6 hours of watch, you were like driving the ship. And then the 12 hours that you were off, you were managing your division. So you really never slept ever.
That's really good for you.
And then you were also never on the same cycle because 6 on, 12 off means that your sleep shift would rotate.
What a nightmare.
And it was awful.
Yeah.
They've actually corrected some of that now because of the mishaps. So I don't know, like, the past 4 or 5 years, the Navy's had some pretty big mishaps. And when they've gone into looking at that, they uncovered a lot of what was so like unsufferable.
Well, and they're finding now like how important sleep is. You would think that'd be common sense, right? Like every mammal needs to sleep, but for whatever reason, it's almost like a thing to be proud of if you burn the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
I'm up early and I stay up late, and it's like, what, you're killing yourself. You're giving yourself Alzheimer's.
You can't operate at the right mental level like that. You can't.
And like, you can't, not only can you not operate at the right mental level if you're not getting enough, but if your shift is changing constantly, it doesn't matter if you're getting enough sleep. That can mess you up in itself.
For sure.
There's police departments that I have friends at that do like day shift for 2 weeks, night shift for 2 weeks, and shit like that. And night shift's bad enough. I can't imagine swapping every 2 weeks. It's like living hell. Yeah.
Because your body never adjusts. Because that first couple of days when you're trying to get used to being up all night, you feel that sick feeling.
Yep.
And then it goes away. But then it comes back if you don't actually stay in that rhythm.
Man, when I was night shift as a patrol officer, and everybody listens like, Anderson was only night shift for 3 months. Yeah. I got real lucky because I got a lot of people underneath me pretty quickly. The seniority got increased rapidly. And so, yeah, I only had night shift for a little bit, but especially with kids, because you do night shift for 3 or 4 days. And then when you're home, you're dad. So you're trying to bounce back and forth, and then you're home for 3 or 4 days, and then it's right back. And it's constantly that swap, you know?
Yeah.
And like you said, that first day that you do the swap, you just almost feel sick, you know?
It's this weird feeling.
I don't know if you listen to Rogan much.
I do.
So he had a sleep specialist on. I don't know if you heard that episode, but it'll make you realize all the stuff we were doing to our bodies in the military was just killing ourselves.
I know. I think my takeaway from that was like lifespan being like significantly less if you don't sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also a genetic thing to it too.
I believe
like people's bodies require different amounts of sleep. And so like Jocko can take pictures of his watch being up at 4:30 every day. But if everybody tried to do that, it'd kill them. No.
And I mean, I just had a baby last year, so I feel like I had a deep dive back into no sleep land. And so it was rough.
You know what's funny is like my daughter, my youngest turned 5. And so we're pretty removed from the baby phase. And you forget about all that.
I know. I forgot. My boys are older, and then we had a baby, and then it was like, you know, all over again.
You're like, oh yeah, this is what it's like.
Yeah. Yep.
So she's a year now, huh?
She's a year.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
No, I'm excited for this episode because like we've been friends for quite a while, but I don't feel like I know you very well. You know?
Yeah.
Just because like my wife and you are friends, and you've worked out with the girls for a long time, but you're new to jiu-jitsu. Yep. Or how new to jiu-jitsu are you actually?
I started about a year ago.
Okay.
But then I took a little break when everything locked down.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't give myself credit for that whole year, but I started about then. But I've only been training up here with your
night,
class, the night crew, which feels totally different, you know, for 4 months or so.
Yeah. So for people listening, at my academy, we have several different instructors that run like a morning class or different classes throughout the week. And I coach certain classes as well. And just inevitably, they're going to have a different flavor, a different feel, just based on how people run stuff. And you came to the dark side.
I did.
Like what? It's been a month now or something?
Yeah, even longer than that. I think it was the beginning of the summer I started coming up here.
Dude, it's been awesome.
It's a totally different situation because I love it and I hate it at the same time. And I hate it, and I say that like nicely because I do like it a lot.
What do you mean by you hate it then?
Because if anybody who knows me, I feel like I've always been sort of the opposite of combative, just in general. And I'm aware of this. Like, I feel like it's been something I'm just like keenly aware of as not a weakness, but maybe even like confrontations. Generally, I don't like them. I'm kind of like a flex and very friendly person. And so I never choked anybody. Ever. And so at first, just choking anybody I hated it at first. And being choked, it's just against everything I've ever like experienced. And so if you've never had somebody choke you, it feels crazy. And again, like maybe it's just different because I was never growing up like in fights and stuff like that. So I just never had that sort of like I don't know.
What made you want to keep coming back then if it felt foreign and weird?
This would just be another deliberate choice to make myself uncomfortable to grow.
Okay.
In this particular thing, I know how much benefit there is just because of, one, the community draws you in, because the people care. And I feel like if that wasn't the case, it wouldn't be the place for me to grow.
Yeah.
But because the community's there, because I trust you, because this is such a dynamic thing that also challenges my limiting beliefs about my body, I felt like this was just the place I needed to be.
That's awesome. And it's cool to hear you say, like, I didn't like it, but I stuck with it because I knew that it would make me grow. Because you're fortunate enough to have had enough experience through coaching CrossFit, coaching nutrition, being an athlete, that you understand that that's how it works. That's how the game's played. It's not always going to feel good. And to get good at something or to grow as a person, it's going to be painful and it's going to suck at times.
Yeah.
But for people that that don't understand that or haven't been an athlete growing up, jiu-jitsu can scare people away.
I could see that. I could see you. I mean, I had so many injuries just in my first month. Stupid stuff. Like somebody said active toes. So I tried to have active toes and I jammed my big toe straight into the mat and just broke it. I mean, it was awful.
I broke like countless toes. Toes and jiu-jitsu do not go hand in hand very well.
It was rough. And then, I mean, there's just little things, but I mean, it grows on you. But I think more than that, it's just watching and feeling uncomfortable on a regular basis that is so important. And you have to seek it out because we're wired to do the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And so I feel like you have to seek it out. And honestly, coming out of a season where I had a baby, and that piece of me also, again, like that would be more like comfort zone, right? Like just even that, the hormones associated with having a baby and nurturing a baby feels very timid. And I even sense that, like even, so here's a perfect example. Like Josh has always joked that Josh is my husband, that like, I don't have very good street sense, you know? I don't say that lightly. I feel like that's another thing that I'm aware of, that I just assume everybody's awesome, right? Like that's what I mean. And so when I was
and most people are pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You know?
So when I was pregnant, I felt super vulnerable, right? Like because you're pregnant, I think that's your hormones telling you, like
it's like the nesting
crazy,
phase, like,
right? Yes.
Be safe, get everything ready.
Yes. Yeah. So like when I would go into the hospital, there was like, a handful of people who were homeless in downtown Everett. And so I would be really nervous and I could feel it because I was pregnant, and then with having my daughter, it was almost the same, like hyper sensitive and protect mode. And I think that that's good because that's our like human instincts. But it's also in that safe space of not putting myself out there.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I'm entering this season again where I want to push myself, not just mentally, but physically. And so that's kind of why I'm drawn into it, because I had that season with CrossFit too, and even with weightlifting, and I still love those things. But yeah, this is like, it sucks and it's awesome.
Well, I think it was the new year when you posted your goals and you said, and how long did you give yourself?
I said I wanted to do it in my 40s. And so I'm in my 30s right now.
So you wanted a purple belt by, when was it again?
And I think I said in my, knocked down a picture frame. I think I said either 40 or in my 40s. I can't remember.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm 37.
Okay. Very, very obtainable goal. But when I saw that, I was like, oh, Christy's all in.
Yeah.
Because that's what I always say, like purple belt. Once you're a purple belt, you might as well be a black belt. Like, sure, you need to put more time in and your jiu-jitsu is going to get better. But if someone's getting a purple belt tied around their waist, they understand everything about jiu-jitsu. They've bought off on it. They're all in at that point. I would venture to guess most purple belts become black belts at some point.
I could see that.
A lot of people, majority of white belts walk away. And a lot of blue belts walk away too. That's kind of like a milestone. People are like, okay, I got my blue belt. Cool. And that's awesome. Like if you get blue belt level jiu-jitsu, you're going to win most physical confrontations you get in with other people for the rest of your life. it's just like those kids that were here earlier today. One of them was like, well, I wrestled 3 years when I was young, but I don't know anything. And I was like, you know a lot.
Right.
Because I watched him move, you know? Like, there's a certain aspect of grappling that once it's in there, it's never going anywhere.
I believe it because I feel the exact opposite. I feel like I feel like I move exactly the opposite of what you're supposed to do if you've been grappling. You know?
No, you're not giving yourself enough credit. It's like I told you on Wednesday, because we hadn't rolled in a while, and we rolled on Wednesday, and I loved it because I realized it's starting to click for you. And I remember, I always tell people, give jiu-jitsu 3 months, and you're well past that, right?
Yeah.
But for people that are listening that are considering doing jiu-jitsu, just like Christy said, a lot of it's uncomfortable. A lot of it's scary. But in order to kind of experience those emotions and work through them, you have to commit a certain amount of time to it. And to be completely honest, those emotions never fully go away. Like, I don't experience that stuff very often, being a black belt in a gym with not very many black belts. But when my coach comes up from California and smashes me, all those fight or flight bells or whistles are going off. You know, I can't breathe. It's all that stuff. So it never goes away completely. But just to kind of get a grasp of it, I always say 3 months of 2 to 3 times a week minimum. And at the end of that, if you're still like, no, this isn't for me, maybe it's not.
Yeah. But I think part of the challenge for me too was I had told myself for so many years that I couldn't do this because of my knee. And I mean, I can give everybody a little bit of a background, but I had told myself that.
Give me a lot of bit of background, because you said in prep school.
Yeah.
Right.
So
no, your first year at the Naval Academy, it started having problems.
Yeah. So I just had some swelling. And so when I went to the doctor, they said, the orthopedic surgeon at the academy said, well, you didn't tear your ACL, but it's not functional. And I was 18. And so like, I don't know. Well,
I'm 40 and I don't know what that means either.
Right. But I mean, if you look at me, if you guys are listening, you can't see this, but my joints are pretty bendy. Like I wouldn't say double jointed, but I would say close to hypermobile.
So your ACL is just so loose that it doesn't give you the stability you need?
Right. But I think what happened is that the doctor she was evaluating just my knee. And so she was like, oh, this knee's super loose. But had she looked at my whole body, she probably would have been like, oh, Christy's whole body is super loose. So what she did was like, she said, you don't have a functional ACL, so we're just going to do a reconstruction. And I was 18, so I couldn't. I
hate hearing stories like this.
I couldn't do anything. I mean, I just thought, okay, yep, let's do it. Let's fix it. And again, this was my first year of 4-year training, you know, very like physical, all, you know, competitive, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, let's do it. And plus I was playing high level sports. I was in good shape. I was like, let's do it. So I had the surgery, just an ACL reconstruction. I was 18.
And maybe you don't even fully know, but if the ACL wasn't damaged, it's just loose.
They shouldn't have touched it.
Well, when they say reconstruction, do they cut it?
They cut it out.
And then tighten it back up and reattach it?
No, so that first surgery, they did a hamstring graft. So they pulled from my hamstring and they did it as though I had torn it. So they cut out my functional ACL and then put in a new one as though I had torn it. And they took the new one from my hamstring.
That's just military doctors trying to get a rep in.
Right. And so the worst part is, that's not the worst part. So the worst part is I was 18. And then I started.
You're not even done growing yet.
No. And I mean, I was also a female athlete. And so like, I think that's, you know, when you're 18 and a female, your body's still changing quite a bit. But the surgery didn't work. So.
It didn't take or?
No, like 9 months later, my knee was still not working. I tried to go back to playing sports. I tried to go back to running, all the things, and it wasn't working. So I went back to the doctor and I was like, it doesn't work. Like my knee is swelling all the time. And they're like, oh, you're a statistical failure. So we need to redo it. So they redid my ACL reconstruction, but this time they took the graft from my good knee. So they pulled my patella bone from my right knee and put it in my left knee. So I had my second ACL reconstruction.
How old were you then?
Probably like 19 and a half.
A year later.
Yeah, a year later. Then they did a couple surgeries because my knee wouldn't bend. So they cleared out a bunch of junk that was stuck in there, like scar tissue and stuff.
And was this stuff caused by the surgeries?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So again, still just
I hope you're getting
on.
100% disability.
I'm not. No, I am getting some VA disability, but not 100%. It gets worse. So then I was doing my best because I still had to pass physical fitness tests. I got to swim and stuff like that instead of run. But I had to be a certain level of okay to commission, because you can't be going into, you know, they won't commission you a training program if you're broken, right?
Yeah.
So I had to function. So I was functioning on this knee that didn't work. And then as soon as I graduated and commissioned, they did a third ACL reconstruction because they were like, it still didn't work. So let's try it one more time because you're a statistical failure, which there are statistical failures with all surgeries, but they're not typically like 18 or 19-year-old healthy, fit kids. They're like people who are old and maybe that didn't take or whatever like that. But they did my third ACL reconstruction, and then I went to the fleet. So then I went to my ship.
Where did they use a cadaver on that one?
That time they used a cadaver.
Okay. Is that the one you still have?
Nope.
Yeah, just relax, Greg. We're getting there. All right.
So I didn't really rehab much because I went out to the fleet because I didn't want to, because if you, just everybody who's in the military knows, or even in law enforcement, if you get medically out for too long, then you get booted. I didn't want to be booted. I wanted to be in the service for my whole life. And so I was like, I'm going to my ship. So once they did that ACL reconstruction, I went to my ship, but my knee wasn't better. And so I did my deployment, and that was, you know, my time out. It was a South America deployment, but my knee never got better. And so they ended up having to do a medical evaluation on my knee.
And then, so that was, I'm already losing count. Was that 4 surgeries while you were in the military? Or
yeah,
5?
5 when I was in. Yep.
And what's the status now?
So then when I got out, and I still thought this whole time that I was a statistical failure. So funny enough,
statistical failure sounds like some ridiculous military term. It just
made it sound like something like, this is just random. You just happen to be like the poor random person who this surgery that we've done millions of times didn't work on.
All 5 of them.
All 5 of them. And then when I got out, so a couple things happened. One, I got married to my husband right after we graduated. And so after I wasn't deployable anymore, we started having kids. So I had my first, and then when I had my second, I went and saw a civilian knee doctor. I just got out of the Navy. And I said, what should we do? Like, my knee's terrible. I'm a failure, right? Like, this doesn't work on me. And he said to me, it looks like they drilled the hole in your tibia in the wrong place. And they just repeated the same mistake.
Go back to the VA.
3 times.
Tomorrow.
So it was right after I'd had my second son. He was less than a year old. So I had a 2-year-old and then a baby. That a civilian doctor did his best effort to try to repair my knee. So he did it in 2 stages. And the first one was a bone graft and a microfracture. Microfractures are kind of questionable if they help. It's pretty like aggressive. They drill holes in the top of your tibia and it bleeds bone marrow into the joint to try to repair some of the cartilage. Because after all these surgeries and me trying to like stay in shape and train and do all the things, I had an unstable knee. So I destroyed my knee in terms of like arthritis and what you can do to when it doesn't have any stability.
Yeah.
So he tried to repair that. He had to bone graft the spot in my tibia where they had drilled the hole improperly. And then he did a 4th ACL reconstruction.
Jeez.
And so that's kind of where my story coaching kind of started, because with all of those surgeries, I had always relied on exercise as my way to be healthy and fit. But I sort of had a shitty diet because I grew up eating like, I don't know. I was born in 83. So
yeah, we were all 80s kids had shitty diets.
I ate like,
sorry, Mom.
Yeah.
I like, and I was never like a fat kid just because I think I was outside playing and like burning the calories. But I'm not kidding. I could go in to the pantry at any time I wanted and get Reese's Pieces and Pepsi. Like whenever I wanted. And I remember doing that daily.
We used to order like, I don't know, 7 pizzas from Papa John's, you know, and it would come with like 8 2-liters.
If I caught my kids eating Reese's Pieces and drinking Pepsi with it, I would lose my shit.
I know.
Just poison on top of poison.
I used to eat like Nutter Butters for lunch. You know those wafer chocolate things with peanut butter? I would eat those for lunch, and I was playing all these sports, and I would order 3 Otis Spunkmeyer cookies because that was like a thing you could order. I would eat that in a bag of popcorn for lunch.
Well, and the military doesn't do you any favors with nutrition. Like, you can eat as healthy as you want in the military, but you have to understand it yourself, you know?
Yeah.
And like in the Ranger Regiment, it was actually pretty cool because it was unlimited chow. Like most military DFACs, it's like, here's your starch, here's your protein, move along. In Ranger Regiment, you could get as much as you wanted of whatever you wanted because they're like, the fitness standards are harsh enough and we train hard enough that we don't want any of these guys to be like in a caloric deficit.
You're burning so many calories.
So you can eat whatever you want. That was the rule. But I didn't understand nutrition until after I got out of the military.
Right.
You know, I actually studied it. I went to college and then I started experimenting with my body and started to kind of get dialed in, but I still feel like there's a long ways to go before I really understand my body and what works for me, you know? And for most people that have never looked into it or studied it, like it's a foreign fucking concept to them. And like my mom, and bless her heart, she's an awesome cook, but she takes offense when I talk about this because she's like, well, I fed you good food growing up. And I'm like, you did, but you also allowed me to shove as much junk food in my mouth as I wanted, whenever I wanted, you know?
Yeah, and you get a taste for the junk food. It's
you get addicted.
Right.
They've proven that sugar is as addictive as heroin.
Yeah, I was addicted to diet soda in the military, and people are like, "Oh, you can't be addicted." I promise you, I was addicted to diet soda.
Well, you know, me and my best friend Sheely, who's been on the show, he's a doctor. We were literally just talking about that like 2 days ago. What is addiction? If you want it, that's a level of addiction, right? Yeah. If you're craving it, if you're thinking about it, like, I mean, I don't know what clinically defines addiction, but you're damn right you can be addicted to diet soda.
I would drink 7 or 8 a day, no problem. And
it's a good way to hydrate, huh?
There was no time that I walked into a store that I didn't walk out with a diet soda. I couldn't not. And that's what I mean. I still can't. I haven't had a diet soda in, I don't know, 6 years or so. I went cold turkey for real.
They're so good. Like, no. I don't drink sodas at all.
Right.
Like, I don't allow sodas in my house. My kids, they have to come in, if we're at like a party or something, they have to come and ask permission if they're going to have a soda.
Yeah.
But we had like a UFC party or something a couple weeks ago, and someone left a 6-pack of Diet Squirt. Oh my God. And I fucking drank one. And I told Jenny, I was like, this is the most delicious thing I've ever had in my life.
Made for you to love it.
So, like, I had one every night for 6 days. And then she's like, that's it.
You almost started.
Yeah, I did. I was like, oh man, I really want more of those. She goes, I'm not buying that shit.
Yeah. No, so. I definitely got to adulthood with no clue how to eat. And so.
And I think, and maybe this is, maybe it's just my genetics, or maybe it's from growing up eating whatever the fuck I want, but I feel like I get fat easy. And I think it might be a byproduct of being able to have pizza and Reese's peanut butter cups anytime I wanted. Because I never had like, I didn't have any definition as a kid, but a lot of kids don't have definition. It's just little kid bodies, right? But then when I got older and I got into like the military and I was deploying, and I started to understand, like, not necessarily like how to get ripped or what like would get you looking good, but what kind of foods would make you feel good. Like, oh, I feel like I can perform better if I'm eating this or I'm eating that. And then it wasn't until I was contracting and going to college, I started to dial in my eating and like, oh, okay, this is how many carbohydrates I should be eating. And then I had buddies that could just eat whatever the fuck they want. And they would eat ice cream every single night and just be 5% body fat and can run a 12-minute 2-mile and just be a super athlete. But when I talked to those guys, they didn't grow up eating shit. So I think there's a big thing to be said for what you put into your body for the first 15 years.
I'm suspicious of that too. I mean, I'm sure there's some studies out there, but just from my own observations, the people who grew up on a highly processed food diet and lots of sugar generally struggle more with maintaining like a lean body.
And I can get ripped, but it's hell.
You got to work it.
And then I don't feel good there either.
Right.
Like, it's like my body's muscle memory wants to have a little fat. And I hate that.
I also think some people are wired to run hot and are sort of like that more endurance type athlete. They lean towards running like a little leaner. And then there's other people's bodies who are more anabolic and can build muscle mass easier, but they put on fat easier too.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like I see that.
And everybody wants the best of both worlds.
I want to be ripped and I want to be able to put on all the muscle I want.
It's kind of a weird thing though, because when I get really ripped, I don't feel like I perform as well. And so why is it that that's become the look that everybody's seeking when athletically, like I can fight harder when I am at like 12% body fat than if I get really lean?
The way that it works is that you really can't optimize everything at one time. So you could be super healthy, right? Like long life kind of healthy. And if you're going for that, if that's your number one goal, well, then you're probably not training 6 days a week. You're not, you're not trying to get ripped. You're taking naps. You're avoiding all the food that could compromise your health. You're like living that kind of lifestyle. If that's your number one goal. And if your number one goal is to look a certain way, well, that's a different goal. You would eat differently, you would train differently, but you wouldn't necessarily have the longest life, like the kind of things that bodybuilders are doing or bikini models are doing to stand on stage. Like that's not equaling long life.
Yeah, no,
right?
The opposite of that.
Right. And then meanwhile, like you might have somebody who's at the absolute peak of performance, like someone who is trying to, like Eddie, the strongman, right? Like he is the deadlifting a world record amount of weight and he looks like huge, right? Like he doesn't look healthy. So he's not like doing long life and he's certainly not doing, he has no 6-pack abs for the beach, but he's absolutely at the peak of like his performance, which is his, his goal for deadlifting. And so I think where people get caught up is that they want all of it, but that's not really real.
Feasible.
It's not realistic. So you kind of have to be, it's okay to switch in seasons, but it's also okay to just know what's most important to you and say like, if I care most about how I, feel when I work out, that I feel strong, I feel like I have energy, well, you're probably not going to be your leanest. You want to leave a little body fat.
And that's one of my biggest problems with fitness is I want to be good at everything. And I feel like because I want to be good at everything, that I kind of suck at everything, like, because like I'll CrossFit a couple of times a week with Jenny and Angie, and then I'll try and run, and then I'll try and roll. And I feel like it's hard to wear too many hats in fitness, I think
it's okay though, because then you've got variety.
Yeah.
You've got more tools in your tool belt. But I think if you wanted to compete in something, then you would be doing yourself a disservice, because then you're not really doing your best at the thing you're trying to compete at. But I think being well-rounded is a good thing.
Yeah. And there's no free lunch either. Like you said, like in order to get yourself at a certain level in any athletics, it's a give and take. Like if you look at Ronnie Coleman, are you familiar with him?
Yeah.
Did you watch his documentary?
I did.
His body is ruined.
I know.
Completely ruined.
Yeah.
And some people, hey, to be the greatest of all time, that's a price they're willing to pay. But I wouldn't want to be inside of a body that doesn't work for 40 years either, And it's the same with Hicks and Gracie. I don't know.
I do know. I know that.
Okay.
Just from like Joe Rogan.
All right. You're new to jiu-jitsu, but you should know who Hickson is, because he's like the most legendary guy in our sport. But he has so many like herniated discs and bulge discs and just a lot of health problems. But he also is widely regarded as the best of all time. And he had a phenomenal career. He changed the world. And so I would be willing to hurt myself at a certain level to have that kind of notoriety and make that kind of impact on the planet. It's pretty cool. You know?
That's because you got the greatness itch, you know? And so when that's the case, then you're willing to sacrifice your body.
And that guy, he understood stuff. You know, some people are just ahead of their times. He was doing cold water therapy, breathing exercises, all kinds of mobility drills. Like, there wasn't people doing all that stuff back then.
And he knew it.
And he knew it. He'd go do breathing exercises in a river with snow around him. And because he was so far ahead of his times, they, like, anybody that rolled with him back in those days, because the Gracie family, all those guys were savages, and they all the brothers and cousins and everyone unanimously says, they're like, Hickson could do whatever he wanted to me.
It's crazy.
Just a different level, you know?
Yeah.
When UFC 1 came out, did you ever watch any of the early UFCs? So you know that was created to show the world jiu-jitsu. Even
UFC was a big steep curve for me. I couldn't watch it at first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no. I mean, like, that's the level of, like, intimidation I had for combat sports. Like, it took a little. I like watching it now, especially because I can, like, follow along a little bit.
Yeah, now you understand, right?
Yeah.
But the Gracie family created that platform to show the world jiu-jitsu.
That's cool.
And Hickson, being the best of the whole family, there was talk, do we have Hickson go in? But Hickson was like, he took care of his body. He was big and strong and muscular. He looked intimidating. And they said, no, if we want to show the world jiu-jitsu, let's use Hoist. He's smaller. He looks nice. He doesn't have this, like, aggressive demeanor. We want to show that guy can smash everybody.
Yeah.
So that's what they did.
That's funny.
And it worked perfectly. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because that shows the skill. It's
exactly.
not about brute strength.
Yeah, because, I mean, people think of combat athletes as, like, big, strong, tough people, but jiu-jitsu is it's that equalizer, you know?
Yeah, I'm really, it is I feel like everybody's gonna be like, oh, she hates jiu-jitsu. I actually really like it, but I just wanted to be honest about that sort of push-pull in my mind of, you know,
well, I think
how it feels.
I think everybody probably has that.
Yeah.
And they're just not being honest, you know? People aren't probably going to come upstairs and be like, I don't know if I really like this, you know?
Well, I'll tell you the truth at least.
I'll tell you what, though, like, I just had this conversation with Andy today before we started class. There's something inside of you. At least there's something inside of me. Like Rogan calls it your inner bitch. I would want to avoid training almost daily. Like when I was training jiu-jitsu in California, I knew what that meant. I knew that I'm going to have these savages kicking my ass. And so the gym was like right off the freeway. And it was on my commute home. So I would be driving home and I would have an hour or two in Los Angeles traffic before I'd hit that off ramp. And I'd be like, just go home today. You're tired. You worked hard today. You already lifted weights during your lunch break, or you haven't seen your kids enough. Like just a laundry list of excuses of why I shouldn't take the off ramp.
Yep.
And then it's literally coming up 100 meters away. And I'm like, you have to go to practice tonight, you bitch, and pull the wheel to the right and force myself. And that's a nightly conversation, you know?
Negotiating with yourself is so hard.
It's weird. It's like I'm two fucking people.
I think it's good to see that and feel that. That's one of my best, like, coaching things, is to sort of hear that voice and then call it out and be like, no, this is what we're doing.
This is what I don't understand about that voice is I've been working out and training martial arts or even before martial arts, like when I went in the military, for over 20 years working out hard. And I know the second that I'm done training, I'm going to be happy I did it. My body's going to feel better. And the rest of my day is going to be more productive because you've filled your body with endorphins and you just set yourself on a more productive path. But there's still something inside of me. It's like, I don't want to work out today.
Yeah.
Like
we want comfort. We want comfort.
It just doesn't make any sense though. Like logically, you know, everything that you're going to do is beneficial, both physically, emotionally, and mentally, but you're still trying to talk yourself out of it. And that's why I mean, I was forced to become an athlete in the Ranger Regiment. I didn't know what being an athlete was in high school. High school for me was more about partying and fucking off. But I was put in a scenario where it's like, if you want to be with these guys, you have to be an athlete. And if you don't, then you're not going to make it. And so I found myself in a scenario where I didn't really have a choice. And then you look at most Americans, they're always going to have to make a choice on their own if they're going to become an athlete or not. And that's a tough thing to do by yourself. Like almost impossible.
Well, it's one of the things I honestly most passionate about is helping women sort of reclaim that, or if they'd never had it, to give them that gift because it's life-changing. Even just following through, like winning that conversation that you said that you have with yourself and coming here is like a vote of confidence that you're not fucking around and that you're worth it and that it matters. And a lot of times women feel that, you know, they have to give everything to their kids, or they have to give everything to supporting the household or whatever, or even their profession. If they're full-time in, like they're givers most of the time, but they don't necessarily do that for themselves. And so to reclaim that in your physical body is incredibly empowering. It changes your life. And so that's one of the things that I do as a coach is like help people claim that one step at a time. And it's so important because, and I don't want to like jump all around, but I feel like if we circle back to where I said that I was stuck, you know, with having all those knee surgeries, right? And I had a baby. I was 40 pounds overweight at that point because I didn't know how to eat. I had 2 pregnancies, so you gain normal amount of weight, but then I didn't lose it because I couldn't exercise it away. So I was just stuck. And that part of me was gone. That athlete, the part that, you know, could hang with the boys and do all, it was gone. And I just thought, okay, well, this is mom life. I'm going to wear, you know, clothes I'm not, you know, cover myself up. And I think I was 26 at this point. And so I just figured, hey, this is what it's like to be a mom. Oh, this is what it's like to be an adult. You're just going to be stuck, overweight, unhappy. And so I did all the things that I saw, like the diet culture things. I signed up for some shake challenge. I put elliptical machine in my bedroom. I like bought Brazilian butt lift. I thought all of this was
trying to find something.
I needed a solution, and I was desperately looking for one. And what was presented to me were sort of like the advertised quick fixes. But I thought that's how you did it because I'd never known what it was like to eat healthy. I knew sports, but I didn't know how to like treat my body otherwise.
Yeah, that's only one piece of the puzzle.
Right. And so I was in this position where I was sad. I was happy with my family. I was happy with my relationship. I liked my job at the time, but I was sad for me. And that sucks. I mean, it sucks if you don't feel comfortable with your husband anymore because you don't like your body. Yeah. It sucks if you don't like want to wear clothes or go to the beach or jump in the pool with your kids because you don't like your body. And I know women struggle with this big time. And that's exactly where I was. Well,
even looking at yourself in the mirror and not liking what you see.
Yeah.
Like that's a problem, you know, and that's probably almost everybody.
And then what happens is, I mean, and men do this too, but like you hear these solutions, these diets and things, and you try them and then they don't work because they're not really gonna work. Or you work short term and then they stop working because you go back to doing your real life. So then not only are you unhappy with yourself, but you're also a failure. You also you don't have the willpower, you don't have the discipline, you don't have the motivation. All these other people seem to be able to do it, but there's something wrong with you. You're just gonna be fat.
You're trying all these things that aren't working.
Right.
So it's why aren't they working?
And that's where I was. And so I was really stuck. And my husband, he was still active duty at the time. He left on deployment. And I moved back to my hometown on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. I moved in with my mom and my babies. You know, I had a 3-year-old and almost 4 and almost 2. They were babies. And I said to myself, like, I'm going to do it while he's on deployment. I'm going to get in shape, you know. I'm going to get this weight off.
Well, was it 7 months?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was actually even longer because his ship broke and then it got extended. So it ended up being almost a full year that he was gone. But what was funny is I walked into the gym. I signed up for a class I hated. It was like a step aerobics class, which I like so not me. And I was terrible at it. And I was like, well, this is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to make yourself do this thing that you hate every day until you lose this weight, because you have to lose this weight and you're going to have to diet. And what happened was I met a coach, a trainer, and he was just like, hey, come out to my boot camp class in the park. I was like, all right. You know, it was cold and crappy out. And I was like, yeah, I'll come. And I went, and he was a coach. Like, he was exactly what I needed. He wasn't full of shit. He didn't have some weird plan. He was just a really good trainer. And we didn't have good equipment. Like, it was rusty barbells and BS in the park. But like, and what he did for me was, I had this knee, right? Like, I mean, we're talking 9, 10 surgeries deep, where I had this belief I can't get in shape. I can't play sports again. I can't do anything. But he didn't care about my knee. Like, he didn't want me to get hurt, but he didn't like make me sit out. Oh, you can't do this because of your knee. He
would
would
allow you to use it as an excuse.
Right. He didn't allow me to use an excuse. So he treated me like an athlete, and he also encouraged me. He said to me, like, I see somebody in there. And that was what I needed. And he also just gave me some basics. He was like, hey, you can't eat out all the time. You got to eat out very rarely if you're trying to lose weight. Mm-hmm. Like, you want to lose weight, you got to eat more protein. That's what this looks like. You got to eat enough food. You got to drink water. And it was just the basics. And that year, he gave it back to me. He gave back that piece of me that was gone. And that's
why you're so motivated to be a coach. Because
right.
I can hear it in your voice right now as you're talking about like how special that was.
And so I quit everything that I had like been trained to do in college. I was like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to be a coach. And so I got my personal training certification, and we actually moved out here to Washington State. And I didn't know a soul out here. I just got my personal training cert. My husband had just come home from deployment. The kids were still little. So this is brand new, newly minted coach. And I was like, I'm going to start a boot camp class just like the one that mattered for me, but I'm going to start it out here in Washington. Well, it was January.
Yeah.
It was like the year that the polar vortex had come through. And I was like, I'm going to start this class.
Was it Snowmageddon?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to start this class. I didn't know anybody. So I got myself like a shitty tire off of Facebook Marketplace, like a car tire. I had a set of dumbbells, a yoga mat, and like maybe one other piece of equipment. And I started making events on Facebook and inviting people, and I went out the first day, and it was so funny because Josh, my husband, has always been supportive of me. And he was supportive of this too, even though it was kind of crazy because I was like, I'm doing this thing now.
That's how shit starts though.
Yeah. And he bought me this jacket. It was a purple rainproof jacket, like a winter Under Armour situation, keep you warm and dry. And he had all this like in hope for me. And I felt it from the people who had kind of watched me go through my personal transformation. And I went out to my very first class and nobody came because it's raining, cold. But I stood out there at the park and I was like, fuck this. I'm going to make another one next week. And we made another one, and I made another one. And it took 6 weeks before people started coming. I would just go out to the park and wait there and hope that people would come. And finally 1 or 2 people started coming, and then it turned to 3 or 4, and then 7 or 8. And then it became this like passion project of coaching people in the park. And that first year of coaching is kind of where I feel like it was all grit and no skill at that point. I was brand new. I mean, I had passion, but I didn't have any experience.
You're saying you didn't have skill as a coach.
Correct. Like I didn't have my
coaching is an acquired skill.
It takes repetition.
It takes a lot of repetition.
And
I feel like, at least for me as a jiu-jitsu coach, I always feel like I need to be so much better than I am. But then my students are always like, oh, we love your classes, So it's just being self-critical, I guess. But yeah, the biggest thing that I've learned about coaching is through coaching other people, you learn about yourself a lot more too. For sure.
And in that kind of setting where it's not handed to you either, like it wasn't like, oh, here's 100 people that signed up for this class, you just got to lead it. It was all learn and flex and go out in the rain, go out in the cold, go out and do it. And
where were you doing these at?
At Lake Stevens Community Park.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
At the park. And it was, but that year I also started coaching CrossFit. I fell in love with coaching. And
what year was that?
Probably 2004 14 maybe.
So did we already have this place built?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. This was my very first CrossFit
You
gym.
started coaching downstairs then, huh?
Yep. I started my very first CrossFit coaching happened in this building. And
I was still living in California, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've coached, I don't know how many hours, thousands and thousands of hours since. And my very first one was here. And it was all the same, like, fear of getting started. Everybody's going to think I'm some kind of poser. Who's this girl who doesn't know anything?
Yeah.
Those of beliefs come up all the time.
Because I want to come back to that, because I remember when I came home and met you. But what about that year that it was your personal transformation?
Yeah.
Like, that guy helped you out both with like workout programs and kind of gave you a basic overview of nutrition. But what did that feel like? Like, was that something, did you struggle throughout that year, or did you start to see results and just get motivated as fuck and start hammering it? And then by the end of that year, do you feel like you'd become a new version of yourself? You were like on the right path?
I think it felt like a little bit of reclaim every single time, because I had this thought that I couldn't do it because of my knee.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had this thought that I was going to be fat forever. Like, I really did think, well, this is just where I'm stuck. So every time I showed up to a class, and they were just hard boot camp classes, it felt like I was proving myself wrong. And I'm like, oh, you are doing it. So it was just a little bit of building confidence back up through each day. I don't think and now that I've coached for a long time, I think the myth of like flipping a switch, it doesn't really help people. Like, you don't just wake up one day and be like, oh, okay, I'm 100% different. You might wake up one day and say, I'm changing, and mean it. But it's every single day after that you actually prove it.
Sure.
That's where you prove that you're doing something different. And so that first day doesn't matter as much to me. But that's kind of what it was that year. It was showing up, training hard, because that's what you do when you lose weight, right? You got to work hard. And it was consistency. It was just eating real food and limiting bullshit. That's
one thing that I think is kind of cool right now in the fitness culture is, I think like what are all the bullshit things?
So many bullshit things.
Like the shake weight. What was the one? The Thigh Master, and just all these different programs. You could fucking name 100 of them. And I feel like fairly recently, in the last 5 to 10 years, the new things coming out is like, hey, you're going to have to work really fucking hard. Mm-hmm. And that's what works. And
I think it's more accepted in the exercise space. I feel like people are really good at wrapping their head around that and finding some flavor of it that they like. But in the food space, I still see a lot of people not sure if something is a gimmick or if it's something that they should try, or maybe this is the thing that's going to work for them.
Yeah.
And the nutrition piece still, and the mindset piece that goes with it, it still seems to be the harder part. Because I think you're right. Like, the exercise piece, people are starting to get it. Like, okay, I'm going to have to work.
Yeah, there's no shortcuts to the top.
No.
And that doesn't mean everybody's going to do it, but I feel like the people that are trying to figure it out understand, like, okay, this is what I have to do now. And people talk shit on CrossFit, but CrossFit has done a lot of good for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And because that's kind of the whole mentality of it. It's like a holistic approach. We're going to eat clean foods and we're going to work hard as fuck.
Yeah. I mean, the whole time I was in the Navy, I never climbed a rope.
Uh-huh.
I didn't climb a rope till CrossFit.
So could you do a dead hang pull-up when you were in the Navy?
Nope.
Not in the Navy. I mean, that's bizarre. Most girls can't do one dead hang pull-up.
Nope.
They can't do one. I always joke because one of my buddies that I worked is like, you think athletic girls look good? I was like, I like athletic girls because if my wife were to slip and fall and she's hanging from a bridge, I want her to be able to do one pull-up.
Just one.
To save her life.
Yeah.
And if you can't do one pull-up, you die. Like, that seems unreasonable. But, I mean, Jenny was the same way. She couldn't do one dead hang pull-up until just a couple of years ago. And now she can do 100. Like, that's her and Angie will do workouts. They do 10 sets of 10. It's like, it's fucking insane.
Yeah.
That the human body can change that much from from most people hanging from a bar that, you know, they try and do one dead hang pull up and they don't even budge.
And
you know?
but that's like even another really great example. It feels embarrassing when you can't do one dead hang pull up. Even as a woman, it's hard to hang from the bar the first time if you've never hung from the bar, especially as a female, your grip's not very good. And so it feels embarrassing. And then the process of building that strength is a grind. If you have zero pull-up ability, to get to a dead hang strict pull-up is a lot of work. And I remember feeling even some of the similar feelings that I feel in jiu-jitsu during that period of like getting that first pull-up, because I remember hanging and he'd be like, try. And you don't want to try because you know you're not going to make it. But then the trying effort was the coach helping you just a little bit so you could get your chin over the bar. But that's a grind. Like that's an ego, you know, like and you have to be down for it to have that kind of delta. I feel like you've got to put your ego aside and just allow the process to happen. And a lot of times that does mean having a coach or somebody, you know, be a part of it.
Was that J-Ro coaching you on?
That particular pull-up example was that coach back in Maryland.
Oh, back in Maryland?
I didn't get the pull-up then, but I remember him helping me. But yeah, J-Ro is a fantastic coach, and he was here when I got a lot of firsts.
So with Jenny, when she started to, okay, I'm committed to fitness, and I'm going to learn this stuff, and I'm going to develop these skills, she used a rubber band for a long time to develop her pull-ups. And I remember, I don't remember if I was here training or if Jenny told me a story, but there was one night when J-Ro was like, take the rubber band down. You're done with that thing.
Yep.
And
that's how I'm always teaching people too.
I can't do a pull-up. He goes, oh, yes, you can. And that's the first night she did 100.
And that's what I mean.
Like, she did her 10 sets of 10 that night. And he just realized, like, take that fucking rubber band down. Like, I see how you move. I see how strong you are. You don't need it anymore.
People are special. And I feel like when you put people together who care and also can guide you just a little bit, there's just so much there that you would miss out on your own. And like, that's just a perfect example. Like we live in these little bubbles where we're trapped all the time and we think that we know our boundaries. And sometimes it's so helpful just to have somebody be like, put that band away.
Yeah.
You're strong enough to do this now.
Now, I remember when I met you, like I moved back home from California in 2015.
I think Jenny was pregnant.
Yeah. Yep. She was pregnant with Logan. And you were already one of the coaches here. And you were already good at everything, and you were strong. And I remember just thinking, oh, Christy's like a really good athlete. That's cool. Like J-Ro has some awesome coaches here. And it wasn't until we became friends on, it was like Instagram or Facebook, and you posted pictures of who you used to be. And I was shocked because I was like, wait a minute. I couldn't connect the dots. I was like, she's an absolute monster athlete. And that was who she was a couple of years ago. And it was shocking to me that to see that level of change and obviously like that level of commitment that comes with that. And I remember, I don't remember if you remember that we talked about this
a little bit.
I was like, I can't believe the transformation that you've created. But the interesting thing about you, because my wife went through a very similar process, like almost to a T. Couple kids, was just stuck, couldn't get the weight off. But to this day, I mean, we'll be in bed scrolling through Instagram and we'll see her posts. And she's done the same thing. She's a very good, strong athlete now. But you put it out there. You have no shame in it. And that in itself is empowering. And a lot of people, Jenny says it all the time. She's like, I could never post before and after pictures just because I'm so ashamed, you know? And you just own it. You're like, hey, this used to be me. This is what I looked like. I had 3 kids, so I have some extra skin. Guess what? My stomach has some stretch marks on it, and I don't give a fuck. And I'll go hammer a workout, and I'll do jiu-jitsu, and I'll get after it. And I think like that's a message that is lost, because what does everybody see? They see the Instagram models that are airbrushed. All the girls look perfect. All the guys are shredded. And it's like, but this is real life. You give a window, you open a window to real life. And I think it's fucking awesome.
I appreciate that a lot. It means a lot to me. I try to be real because there is so much bullshit out there. And it doesn't help you when you're stuck in that place. you have to see that there's someone who has 3 kids and who has a tough, like tough challenges. Everybody's got their different kind of challenges. But for me, with Josh still being active duty, that adds challenges on. And knowing that, days aren't going to be perfect at all. And my body is not perfect. But even in this stage where I'm postpartum, my body's still not back to like where it was, fitness wise, because I had a baby. But most of the time you don't see that process. You only see okay, now you're 9 months pregnant, you got this big old belly, and then the picture that you see on Instagram is someone looking like ripped, right? You've got those two side by side.
Yeah.
You don't see the in between. And so some of the pictures that I've shared recently are just to show you, like, this is the in between stage where you grind.
Yeah, you're documenting the journey.
Yeah. Because most people don't see themselves in that like impossible before and after. And so then they just feel like, again, that place where, well, there's something wrong with me then because I can't do that. I can't look like that. So they don't see that, yes, you can look like you. You can look like fit and strong and healthy and happy you, but not if you compare yourself to these impossible, standards. And I feel like that's one of the things that can be most impactful is just to know you're not alone.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. If you went through 2 pregnancies where you didn't understand nutrition and fitness, and then your last pregnancy, you understood it very well. How different were those experiences going through the pregnancy and then also postpartum?
Super different. With my first 2, I ate like Stouffer's mac and cheese like every day. And so what's funny about my 3rd pregnancy was that it was a surprise. So I thought that season was over. So, my boys are 9 and 11 now. And when we moved back out to Washington, my husband was getting ready to leave on deployment. And so I was in this season of running my coaching business. At this point, it was online, and I'm coaching people in wellness and nutrition and health and all that stuff. So I'm full in, we had just moved out here. I've got the boys. Josh is getting ready to leave on deployment. And 5 days before he leaves, we find out we're surprise pregnant. And it was a good surprise, but it was a straight surprise.
Yeah.
We had got rid of all of our baby stuff. We left it, got rid of it on the East Coast before we moved. And so we had this big surprise. And then he left. He left when I was 5 weeks pregnant. And so then that whole pregnancy.
Shout out. I've done that with all the pregnancies.
There you go.
That's guys.
Nailed
if you're listening, that's what you do. Get her pregnant, deploy, and come home just in time.
And then come home. Yeah, you nailed it. So it was very different. I feel like this time around, I exercised the whole time. I came to CrossFit most days just because it was fun and I enjoyed it. I walked.
Yeah, I remember seeing you here hammering workouts like when you were really pregnant.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the thing, right? If as long as you are consistent throughout the whole pregnancy, you can grind to the end.
For sure. And you can even start exercising in pregnancy. You just shouldn't start learning something totally new. Because your body mechanics are weird. And obviously you have a baby bump. And so
don't learn the clean and jerk.
Right. No
when
learning.
You're 8 months pregnant.
Correct.
Okay.
But you can certainly start walking. You can start doing aerobics classes. You can start, the myth is that you can't start exercise if you weren't already doing it. That's not true. You can, and it's good for you. But don't learn a cartwheel.
Human beings have been nomadic since the beginning of time, where pregnant women were walking across the frozen tundra. Like our bodies are tougher than people give them credit for.
Yeah. So I mean, it was different because I exercised, I walked. My nutrition wasn't perfect, but it was way better. But speaking of body, like you were talking about earlier, what your body's prone to do, even with exercising consistently in this pregnancy and eating pretty well, I still gained 40 pounds. It's just the way I'm wired. Again, who knows? Maybe I ate like too much honey bunches of oats growing up or like whatever, but I'm wired for that. And so this postpartum phase just has been some of the same stuff that I help people do, but I'm doing it myself, which is like build consistency with how you're eating, drink your water, like eat real food, build your plates that like have vegetables on it, and then exercise. And so building back in the intensity of exercise has just been a part of this postpartum journey. So I'm not quite at my pregnancy body weight, but I'm almost there. And again, I just feel like I'm just doing the grind. It'll get there.
How long after birth did you come back? Did you wait before you came back to the gym?
3 months.
Okay.
Everybody's different. So the number that everybody says is 6 weeks, but I'm pretty tuned in and I wasn't ready at 6 weeks. I think I started showing up, but I wasn't really doing anything. And I want to say I actually started jiu-jitsu at about 4 months postpartum.
Okay.
So I was all sorts of like,
yeah, that's pretty soon.
Yeah. I mean, I was healed and stuff, but I definitely was very early in. And the funny thing was about it was because my kids had started, and I was watching their classes anyways, I had watched through pregnancy.
Yeah.
I kind of had a come to Jesus with my own internal voice, which was I had told myself for years that I couldn't do martial arts, especially not jiu-jitsu, because of my knee. And I said, I told myself, you're going to blow out your knee. You're going to do blah, blah, blah. You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't even crawl. You can't even bend your knee all the way. All of the CrossFit and weightlifting that I ever did happened after my knee, but I sort of thought that I could do that. Even I got over that hump, but then I still had this hump where I was like, I can't do this.
Well, and I mean, the reality of jiu-jitsu is in CrossFit, you're in charge of what's happening or what's not happening. And in jiu-jitsu, there's another person that gets a vote in how this is going to go.
You're 100% right. And I knew it. And I was like, this is different.
So it's different. Yeah.
It's different.
Because you don't always get to control the situation. And as a white belt, you very rarely get to control the situation, you know? But I already have noticed you're very aware of your knee and you're aware of what moves feel like there's something that'll work for you or something that won't work for you. And I think as long as you maintain that awareness and also train with the right people, that it won't be an issue, you know?
I think I accepted somewhere along this past year that I could blow up my knee doing anything.
Yeah. Yeah, you could slip on the ice and blow it out.
I mean, there's no ACL in there anyway. That last surgery didn't work. The one that the civilian doctor did, it didn't work.
Well,
so,
I mean, that's kind of a parallel of something that I've come to terms with in myself. It's the same thing with your life. Like you try and live a safe life, and you could get hit by a car walking across the street in a crosswalk, you know? And so it's, do I want to prevent myself from doing the things that I think I'm going to enjoy for my own safety? Or am I just going to see where this ride goes? And I mean, I know I'm reckless to a certain degree, but fuck, you got one shot.
You only have one shot. And honestly, like a lot of times you get a diagnosis. The doctor gives you an MRI report. It says you have a X, Y, and Z. And so then you think, well, that's my box. I'm going to live in this box that this doctor gave me this diagnosis. And unless you're willing to check out, if that's a wrap for you, then I guess live in that box. But chances are you're going to be doing some version of squatting. You're going to be doing some version of walking. You're going to be doing some version of using your shoulders again. So you can't just work around it. You have to do something that uses your body functionally. And CrossFit and weightlifting were a way for me to first use my body like in a real way, like a functional way.
Yeah.
But the funny thing about it is it left a lot of movement on the table because CrossFit, you know, for a lot of its positives, its negatives are it's very much up and down. You know, it's they say you could do it in like an old school phone booth and you would just be there. And so there were parts of my body mechanics that didn't work very well. Like my hips didn't open very well. My like squeezing motion with my legs wasn't good. That's not anything you would do in weightlifting or CrossFit. Even my glute strength was weak because of just the type of things that I would do. And it was funny to me because that was one of the things that drew me into martial art or just into jiu-jitsu was the idea of like, you've got to use your body for real.
Yeah.
You're not checking out. You're 30 at that time, 36. You're not checking out. So you can't sit anyway. Like you got to figure this out. And so to me, the most fun version of that is to do something that's a discipline that you can learn and push yourself.
Yeah.
But I felt better. My hips feel better.
Jiu-jitsu, I tell everybody, jiu-jitsu is amazing for your hips. Not so much for your neck.
No, my neck feels worse.
Yeah, my neck, I mean, my neck has had issues from jiu-jitsu for 10 years now, but I got amazing hip mobility.
Yeah, and I feel it. I feel that piece is coming back. My knuckles feel worse. My neck feels worse.
Yeah, hands and neck. But like I said before, there's no free lunch, right?
No.
Yeah, the whole surgery thing in Western medicine, I had an epiphany a couple like years ago. I think I've told this story before on the podcast, but I was having like pretty severe knee pain to the point where walking was getting hard. And I'm like, I'm a police officer.
Right.
I have to be able to walk. Like, what's going on here? And so I went and got an MRI, and the orthopedic surgeon said, all your cartilage is gone off your femoral condyle. You have none. You have none.
Me too.
And I was like, oh, okay. Well, what does that mean? He goes, it means knee replacement. And I'm like, well, I'm 38. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? A knee replacement. And I'm no fucking doctor, but I've learned through dealing with doctors enough over the last 10 years, especially stuff related to my kids. You have to trust your gut, because at the end of the day, that's just another human being. And some doctors are phenomenal. And then some doctors are telling you to get a knee replacement when you're 38. And I was like, what about stem cells, PRP? I don't know, any type of like Eastern medicine, sauna,
anything.
Graston tools. Like what about certain supplementation? And he shot down every single thing. None of that works. None of that works. And one of my buddies had stem cells, and he goes, dude, I feel like I'm 16 years old again. It worked amazing. And I asked the doctor, and he goes, literature doesn't support stem cells.
It's so crazy. Here's the funny thing too. When it was probably 2 years ago, I had a setback. I ganked my knee at a CrossFit class and it blew up. I couldn't bend it. So I went to an orthopedic doctor and I was like, I just need to know what's going on here. And he was like, well, what's going on here is you shouldn't be doing anything. You shouldn't be doing squatting. You shouldn't be doing coaching. You need to find a low impact activity, because if you don't, then we're going to do a knee replacement now. We're going to have to do one again in 15 years because they don't last that long. And that one will probably, he gave me this doomsday prophecy.
Same thing I got.
And
that must just be their playbook.
And I left there upset, crying, right? Because he basically told me everything I'd loved. I mean, I was coaching full time at that point. I was a head coach at a gym. He was like, you're going to have to find a new career. So what was funny to me was he was one doctor, and in my opinion, not a good one. I called my doctor from Florida, the one who had done the surgery after I got out of the Navy, the one who really tried to fix my knee. I think he was the only ortho that really like had a good take on what would actually help me. It just didn't end up working, but he did try. And I told him what that doctor said. And he goes, listen, your scans, like your MRI and X-ray, are terrible. He's like, but that doesn't mean that your function is going to be terrible. He's like, I've seen pictures that look terrible and someone's doing fine, and it's because of how they're living. Like, they're doing things, they're eating a certain way, they're living anyway. And I would never operate on someone who is doing life, who's not miserable. And he's like, I've seen it the complete reverse too, where someone's scans don't look so bad, but they're miserable. They're not doing anything. He's like, and then it makes sense to try to do a surgery on them. He's like, so don't listen to that doctor. You're doing great. Just let your knee get better. And
what a perfect way to look at it. But I think we inherently put a lot of trust in doctors.
For sure.
And they're just
authority figures.
They're just like anybody. Some are amazing and some are shitheads, And so, yeah, for my knee, I was like, well, I'm not getting a knee replacement. So what else can I do? So I stopped running completely. And running, I mean, me and running have a long history of love-hate, because I've always wanted to be an elite runner and I've never got there. And now I'm thinking like that may be off the table for me. Like, I ran 3 miles twice this week and now my knee kind of hurts. Like, well, that's what you get. But there are activities that don't hurt my knee. And jiu-jitsu actually doesn't hurt my knee, which is bizarre because everybody always says jiu-jitsu is bad for your knees. I've never had knee problems from jiu-jitsu, but I tweaked what I was doing physically, and then, got one of those Theraguns and just kind of geeked out on foam rolling and some other different recovery techniques. And my knee that they wanted to replace feels completely fine now.
It's doing good.
And so I mean, he told me cartilage can't grow back. So I don't know if that's true or not. So I don't know if there's cartilage in there, but it doesn't hurt and I can do whatever I want. But now the other one kind of hurts. So,
but if you went into the doctor and they took some x-rays of your knee today, they would be like, these look terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's their job. Their job is to look at that and say, like, these look terrible. Let's do a knee replacement. They're surgeons. Their solution is surgery.
Cutting things. Yeah.
And so, but you modified slightly and then you just done some other things to support. I mean, cleaning up your nutrition can be huge for inflammation, but also the fact that you scaled back your running probably makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be a runner.
I'm an idiot. I can admit it. I read David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me.
Oh, and you were like, I'm doing
And
this.
I was like, I've always wanted to run a 50-mile race. Like the longest I've done a couple half marathons, but I've never been an elite runner. And I was like, I can run. If David Goggins can run 50 miles, I can fucking run 50 miles. And so I was running every single day and it started to hurt. And then Goggins, who's also not a doctor, was like, you know how he is. Fuck pain. You work through that shit. Most people quit at 40%. Don't be a bitch. Stay hard.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, fuck, that's right. Fucking stay hard, dude.
Yeah.
I don't care how bad it hurts. Keep running. Keep running. Keep running. And then it got to the point where, well, okay, I can't run. And now I can barely walk.
Yeah.
So what's going on here?
I think there's certain exercises that we have to just be like, okay, this isn't going to work for me on a daily basis or something that I'm going to train for real.
Yeah. And then I have to remind myself too, like when I was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around my knee to the point where all the blood flow was cut off and my knee was black.
Wow.
And the doctor said I'd never be able to walk. And so like, if you look at my knee now, you can see all the scar tissue on it.
Yeah.
And that's from the umbilical cord.
Whoa.
It cut all the, and they were together. Both my knees were together, wrapped up. And so whenever I'm having a poor me moment about my fucked up knees and not being able to run like Cameron Haynes, I got to remind myself the initial prognosis was you'd never walk. So
yeah.
I guess I'm doing okay.
And I feel like there's moments where a doctor, somebody, your mom, your spouse is going to be like, you can't do X.
Yeah.
And if they love you, take it for a grain of salt and be like, they know that they love you, but they don't get to decide.
Yeah.
And you don't go from having a fucked up knee to just like running 10 miles or training jiu-jitsu or doing CrossFit or doing something. But there's no reason you can't start with the next thing, the next step, which is, okay, I'm not going to be sedentary. I refuse to be stuck here.
Well, and all those doctors telling you, don't squat, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. That's in a roundabout way. They're telling you, sit on your ass and be lazy.
Yeah. And they also said, you know, don't carry a certain amount of weight. I'm like, my kids weigh more than that. I carry my kids around.
Yeah.
But I enjoy I enjoy sport and exercise, and to steal that wouldn't be a quality of life that I would want. So even if this stupid knee does one day just be like poop out, I'm still going to find something to do. I just do it with the body parts I got left.
Yep.
Because quality of life for me, because like you were talking about when you have that sort of internal battle, I feel that too. It's not like I'm an exercise freak or something. Like a lot of times I don't feel like it, but the payoff for me, the sweat, the endorphins, that positive vibes that you get from exercise trickle down to my food choices, to my confidence, to how I relate to my kids and how I coach. Just bodies were meant to move. And so, you know, one of the things we do in my coaching group is we don't necessarily even call it exercise or like rest day exercise. We just call it movement. Like, did you move today? Yes or no? And wherever you're at.
That's a really good approach, I think.
Wherever you're at, you can say, did I move today? Yes or no? And if that's just a walk, that's fine. If that's jiu-jitsu or CrossFit class or whatever, a marathon, yes, you check the box.
That was the 75 hard program that I failed twice, by the way. But that was one of the things. It's 2 45-minute exercise sessions a day. So it's 90 minutes of exercise a day. But they don't prescribe what that is. And if you're feeling beat, then it can be a walk. You can go walk around your neighborhood for 45 minutes and then that counts. And there was days when I would walk in the morning and I'd walk at night because I wanted a rest day, just feeling beat up. And then you realize like, oh, active recovery is actually better.
Yeah, your body needs to move.
Like walking around the neighborhood as opposed to sitting on the couch, no matter how sore you are, no matter how tired you are, you're better off afterwards, you know? And so that was one thing I really enjoyed about that program. And I should probably start walking more, you know?
I mean, walking's the most underrated activity out there. If you're trying to lose weight, you should be walking, period.
I mean, that's what we've been doing since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
number one easiest thing, like lowest hanging fruit. You're trying to lose weight, start getting 10K every day. Boom. There. Like that's step one. Step two, start drinking some water.
Yeah. That was another part of the program, was a gallon a day.
Yeah.
And that sounds dramatic, and it was for the first week. But I'll tell you what, 90 days into it, yeah, I did 90 days because I failed at day 45 twice.
You've done the full thing.
Yeah, but it doesn't count. I failed.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was days when I'd have my whole gallon down, and then I'd walk upstairs and crawl in bed and pour another 30 ounces of water because I always like to have water when I'm sitting in bed, like doing whatever, and made me realize like, oh, my body's adapted to this. Like a gallon of water is no big deal anymore.
Part of the challenge, I think, with just us as people who have a lot on our plate and stresses and all of that is we've forgotten what it feels like to feel good in some ways.
Oh, I love that you said that. Yes.
We've forgotten what it feels like to be hydrated. If you're drinking 9 Diet Cokes a day, like I was doing, you don't even know.
Yeah. You've went years being in a constant state of dehydration.
I was hydrated by aspartame, which is like the terrible sugar that's in there. But if you haven't slept for more than 6 hours a night or 4 hours a night in years, you think you're fine. You're not fine. You've forgotten what it feels like to sleep and be rested.
Yeah. No, I always tell people, like, there's been a few times in my life when I would consider myself to have had like elite fitness. Like everything was working fine. Like no injuries plaguing me. Like I was a good runner. I was strong. Like everything felt right. And just walking around, you feel like a different human being. It's a different experience being on Earth in a body that is functioning and firing at 100%.
That feels good.
And it's weird to think a lot of people will never get that experience at any point in their life.
And you get in autopilot mode.
Yeah.
You just assume, oh, well, I'm not going to be able to feel good until X. Until what? You get a promotion and you have more time or less time, like, or until your kids are a certain age and then you just have new obligations. Like we put all these parameters on when we're finally going to start taking care of ourselves. And that's just a lie because it's an illusion that'll continue to move. You have to do it now.
You're giving yourself excuses.
Yeah.
Even though you think you're setting yourself up for success. I've heard it. Anybody that owns a jiu-jitsu academy has heard this. I've heard it a million times. I really want to start training jiu-jitsu with you, but I'm going to get in shape first.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, there's one way to get in shape. It's show up.
You got to show. It's that
That's
ego
the hardest
check.
thing.
It's that ego check I was talking about. It's
if
not
you're
comfortable.
fat and you're gassed, and I mean, we have 2 windows on the mats, and people have hung their heads out of them on numerous occasions and yacked onto the gravel below.
I have no doubt.
That's how it goes. And if you think you're gonna do this or do that, or I'm going to change my diet first, or I'm going to start running, none of that stuff's going to happen.
No.
Just go start training.
People are like, when I have more money, when I have more time, when I'm less stressed in this better season, and you're not ready yet is the truth of it. And I'm not wanting you to wait until you're ready. I'm just telling you that mindset, once you flip it and say, no matter what today is, no matter what my kids do or whatever, I'm still going to do my best for today.
Yeah.
If that's a walk and one solid good meal, that's my today. But not put it off, not just give yourself that never ending pass and say, oh, I'm too busy, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Or I'm too broken, I can't do it. I'm too much of a mom, I can't do it. I'm too busy, I have too much on my plate because, I'm stressed at work, I can't do it. That's not true. Now, your seasons are going to look different. And I think that that's okay. Like the season that I was in the year after I had my baby certainly looked different than when you met me.
Yeah.
When my boys were big and I was training all the time. But it's still not an option for me to wait to start jiu-jitsu until it's a perfect time. There's no perfect time. My knee's never going to get better. 4 months postpartum, that seems like an okay time. Like it's not a great time. That's the way it is.
I remember when I was doing MMA stuff, my coach told me, because I was inquiring about a fight, and he goes, well, Greg, you're going to be the youngest you're ever going to be in your entire life right now. And I love that quote because it's like,
that's great.
That's exactly right. No matter how you want to apply that to becoming educated, starting a business, improving your fitness, right now, this is the youngest you're ever going to be. So what are you going to do with that? You know?
Yeah.
I don't know if you listened to the podcast I did with Stefan. It was a few episodes ago. He's a really good friend of mine. He's a good athlete. And one thing that he says is he thinks of his life in like concentric rings, right? And he goes, in the very center is my physical body. And he goes, that's why it's the number one priority. That's why I have to eat clean foods. That's why I have to work out hard. I have to have this thing, which is the center of my universe, operating at an optimal level. And then the next ring may be like the relationship with my wife. And the next ring is the relationship with my kids. And the next ring is operating my business. And he has a very good approach to understanding he has to be good first internally for all this other stuff to work. And all his stuff is working at a very high level. So it's like, there's something to that, you know?
And like I was saying before, I think women particularly struggle with that piece. And so I don't know how many women you have, if you have mostly men listeners or women listeners, but even if you're listening and you know a woman in your life, I promise you she struggles with this piece because she will not take care of herself because she thinks she can't.
Because she wants to prioritize everybody else.
Yes. It is a gift and a curse. Again, it's probably part of our makeup.
Yeah.
But I think even creating that idea of what you just said, like if your physical body feels good, then that's like the core of coming, you know, the next layers. Think about how that would be different if you felt confident and happy and secure and healthy in your body, how that would change your relationship with like your spouse, or how it would change your relationship with your kids. Would you be willing to play? Would you go in the pool with them? Like, would you stop worrying about your shorts at the barbecue because you didn't want to wear them? Like, would you just be in the moment and not constantly be annoyed with your physical body, and you could just live without that feeling?
Yeah, and it's such an important part of being an active parent, and just being there as part of your kid's life. Like last night, and this happens all the time. All three of my girls were like, handstand contest in the living room. Let's go. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to kick your guys' ass today. And Reagan won because she's doing gymnastics. Right. Yeah. But there's probably 30 minutes. All right, my turn. No, that one sucked. I get a redo. I get it, and it's not only developing them physically, but you're actually bonding and spending time and talking shit and having fun, Like, I don't think I could be a parent if I couldn't walk on a hike for an hour with my kids, or do the handstand contests, or ride their bikes around the neighborhood. Like, all that stuff is so important,
But the gap to get there means setting boundaries and prioritizing yourself. Because if you're not already in that place if your body if you're overweight, if you're frustrated with where you're at, and you need to get to that place where you actually feel good enough to hike, you can do the things. That's probably going to require saying no to something else.
For sure. Yeah.
And having boundaries in place. But it also...
everything's give and take.
Yeah. It also might mean getting a babysitter so that you can go to the gym. Well, then you got that like nagging feeling of like, I'm shit mom, or like I'm a bad dad because I was just at work all day and now I'm at the gym trying to take care of myself. I'm really just selfish, and you get that voice in your head too, but you got to squash that voice, because if what we're saying is true, if you have to take care of your body, then you got to spend that time at the gym. And so then you have to be okay with, all right, well, then I'm going to be more focused in my quality time with my kids. It doesn't have to be more, it has to be better. So I think some of the times we get in this myth of like, well, I can't go to the gym because I'm missing out on time with my kids. But if we just spend the time with our kids more focused, less screens, like less phone, and just have it be, if it's less but better, so that it can fit in this other piece. And that's, again, those pieces go together, because once you start prioritizing yourself and you realize it, then you automatically, it ripples out. And you're like, okay, well, I want to act different in my relationships. I want to have more confidence at work. I want to push myself. I'm sick of being stepped on. I've been due for this promotion for a long time. Like, I'm going to put myself out there. And it just ripples out.
And it's interesting you say, like, bring up a promotion at work. And I don't know if females experience this like males do, but when you're a good, strong athlete in a professional setting, you get way more respect professionally. Like, I've seen a lot of bullies, for lack of a better word, in the like professional settings, especially in law enforcement. There's a lot of people in law enforcement that probably shouldn't be. That's no secret. And just the way they treat people, the way they carry themselves, the way they project negativity on other people. If you're a confident, strong athlete that they know isn't going to take shit from them, it's like on a primal level, they don't give you any shit. They bypass you and go right to the next guy. And so I always tell young guys that are up here training, like, the ability to become strong, fit, and fight people will carry you through so many different realms, you won't even realize it, you know? And I'm sure it's the same with females on a certain level too.
I think there's a level of confidence that women get when they achieve these kind of milestones, like how powerful getting one pull-up can be.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how it plays out for individual women in their work settings. It would probably depend on the work setting.
For sure. Yeah.
But I feel like it exponentially improves the belief in yourself. The first time you climb a rope, the first time you lift a heavy barbell. And
have you submitted a full-grown man yet?
I don't know if he let me. I can't tell.
Okay, fair enough.
They've tapped before, but I don't know if they let me get to that point.
Yeah.
I have sneaky small hands, and so if they accidentally let me get my hand in there and I get the other one.
Hey, you're trying to choke someone and you get your hand in there. That they didn't accidentally let anything. You got your hand in there.
So maybe once or twice.
But no, that's another milestone for a woman.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people, like reading forums or reading comments on Instagram, they don't think that women could beat men in fights. I posted something not too long ago about that, and this guy's like, "That's stupid. No woman could beat me in a fight."
I think it was a picture that I was in with.
Okay, so yeah, that's right.
Yes.
And I just want to say, come up here and grapple Ariel.
Yeah, she's so
and
strong.
See what happens. I watch her strangle men all day. And she's not this little petite woman that's like going to get bullied around by you. She's going to get on top of you. She's going to crush you.
Yeah, and then
with
choke you.
Good, solid jiu-jitsu pressure, and then she's going to choke you.
Yeah.
And if you don't train, I don't care who you are. That's what's going to happen. And so I can't tell you how many times I've had guys come up here, and I'm not doing this to like shit on their ego. I'm doing it to show them the power of jiu-jitsu. Hey, go with Ariel, and she'll get on top of them and cross collar choke them, and they can't do anything. It's like, it's real, you know?
I feel like it is a milestone that I'm aware of, that it will be a important milestone for me, whether it's male or female, when I can handedly use jiu-jitsu to not lose against someone who's potentially bigger than me.
Yeah.
And maybe even stronger.
So, I mean, I told you the other day, but something clicked. You're moving correctly. You're always in the right place, and you're offensive too. That's something that a lot of people have a hard time with. Even myself. I feel like I have very good control. I have very good sweeps. I have very good passes. Like, I can get to where I want to get to, but I'm not always looking to finish. And you were throwing up everything. Like, never lose that. Keep that, you know?
It's fun.
Yeah.
It is. Like I said, it's really growing on me. I enjoy it.
It makes me happy to hear too. Cause like, I mean, that's the whole reason we're up here, right?
I still apologize when I choke people. So like,
that's not allowed.
Sorry.
No apologies on my mats.
And I often
eye pokes or inadvertent knees to the balls.
Then you can apologize.
You can say a sorry. Other than that, it's a combat sport.
Yeah.
Like me and Dan have both shot double legs on each other at the exact same time and just collided heads like two rams fighting on the mountainside.
Yeah.
And we should be dead, right? And we like fall to the ground. And he looks at me and goes, I didn't think anyone had a harder head than me. And then it's right back at it, you know?
Yeah.
But I also don't want people to, if you get a little tweak or a poke, or I want to hone your warrior spirit up here. This is a combat art. And you just fucking did this. You just headbutted me. And now I got my bell rung. Let's go.
Right.
That's a training opportunity. Because at the end of the day, I always tell people, when you're in a dark alley with some guy on top of you, you don't want that to be the first time that you're going through this stuff, you know? So just, yeah, obviously if someone gets hurt, tap out and take care of your injury.
Right.
But if it's just something kind of superficial, like a real, you know, like a gi burn across the face, or you headbutt each other, any of that kind of stuff, or inadvertent elbow to the mouth. Like Evan, 16-year-old Evan did that to me. He elbowed me in the mouth so hard and it cut the whole inside of my cheek. And he's like immediately, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, shut up. Let's go.
Yeah.
We're fighting, dude. Don't tell me you're sorry. Try and kill me right now.
Yeah.
So.
I know, you're totally right. It takes a practice to have a jolt of pain, and then, or whatever, just even surprise, and then keep going.
And I see the wars you and Rachel are having.
Yeah.
That's such a huge benefit in your training, to have someone that's also fairly new that wants to get after
Down for it.
Down for it. You know?
And we kind of talk about it too. Sometimes we're like, let's warm up this one, you know? And then another one, we don't say that, and we just know we're down for it.
That means that one's to the death.
Right. That's what I mean.
All right. Well, we're already an hour and 46 minutes. I like to keep these shows at about 2 hours. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to, I mean, you've mentioned your coaching program and how you have an online presence and whatnot, but just let people know like what it is that you do. And obviously we'll put like links in the show notes to your websites and stuff so they can find you if they want to. But more importantly, just like what that is as a internet coaching platform.
So in the years that I was coaching CrossFit, weightlifting, boot camp, all that kind of stuff, nutrition always seemed to be the thing that people struggled with. They could come for that 1 hour. The rest of the time was hard. 23 hours a day. They didn't know what to do. And I did what most people do when they want to coach nutrition. I got certified in nutrition coaching, and that's where I started. But even doing that, I saw that people were it was still very much a diet. It was, what can I do to lose this weight right now? And so I would give them some kind of macro prescription or, you know, something. But it was after it would all fall apart. And so I did that for about, 18 months to 2 years. And then I decided, almost a year ago, I was like, I'm done. This doesn't work. This diet industry system is broken. And even though this was my best attempt at it, like my well-intentioned, wanting to help people, it was just like a nicer package on the same bullshit Weight Watchers I had done before.
So are you saying anytime a certain eating method is prescribed for a certain amount of time to reach a certain like milestone, that in itself is kind of an improper way of looking at it?
No, I think what I realized is that the person that I was trying to help, it wasn't the right method. So if you're training for a sport, if you have a specific need, if you're going to do a bikini competition on stage, if you have a marathon, there's a style of eating.
Okay, yeah.
That
or if you have
sense.
to weigh in at 155 for a fight.
Totally different, right? You're some part of your life is dependent on that. You got to do a nutrition plan, and nutrition coaching is perfect for that. You need a coach. You need a nutritionist. But the person that I cared about deeply was me, that girl who was stuck, who was stuck in that place where I just wanted to feel good again. And what I needed wasn't another diet or even some sort of template program. What I needed was to change my daily habits and routines. I had to change how I was living. And so a year ago, I realized that I was offering people the wrong thing. And then I was hoping to like backdoor them with the changes they actually needed to make. You know, I could help them with the diet they thought they were getting and then hopefully help them with the lifestyle and habits piece. And then I was just like, fuck it, done. And so I restructured everything about my coaching business. And now what we do is diet-free, sustainable habits. That's what we do that work for your real life. I don't care what season you're in. I don't care if you had surgery. I don't care if you have breast cancer. I don't care if you are active duty in the military. I don't care what season you're in. If you're trying to lose weight and feel better about your body, then you don't need another diet. You need to change how you live and how you eat and how you take care of yourself. And so that's what my coaching program is. So when people come to Fit Me, that's the name of my company, that's what we do. We do the basics, and at first people are like, this is it? And I'm like, yeah, this is it. But what they get is so much more than that, because in my company, like we have like core values, and those are realness. Like you were saying, you know, that piece of, we're not hiding the journey. It's a part of this. And like, I don't want you to show up with a filter. Like you're okay with stretch marks here. Like I want you here.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't do that pull up yet? Perfect. I want you here. That realness and then connection. How I was telling you how I think that's so powerful for communities to support each other. And
it's a primal need. So
much. And we try to do these things in isolation. We try to sit by ourselves and like, you know, track all of our food all alone. And like, it doesn't help. You need community. You need people who give a shit when you have a bad day, who can encourage you and support you. So that's part of my coaching program, is this community. And then the last piece is resiliency. That's one of our core values, because at the end of the day, some shit's going to happen. One day you're going to have something come up. And if your fitness and your lifestyle habits can't withstand that in some form, then they're not stable. They're not real. And so we sort of celebrate those setbacks in a weird way, as opposed to pretending like they're never going to happen. And so my nutrition coaching has morphed into, I'm just teaching you how to live diet-free and sustainable. But what happens is if you were living a different way and then you come in to Fit Me and I show you how to do this, you're going to lose weight. You're going to feel incredibly better. But at the end of it, you're going to leave and you're not going to need another diet. You're going to have like bullshit goggles on. And when people are like, hey, you should join the blah, 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 you're going to be like, nah, I'm good. I know what to do. You're not even going to see it anymore. So that's what we do.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I don't know if that's what you knew that I did or not.
I know. I didn't know the details of it. No. But there's a lot of aspects of life where like less is more, you know? And instead of trying to throw 500 prepackaged Jenny Craig meals on their front porch and stuff, it's like if you just help them understand kind of the basics of nutrition, it sounds like, huh? Yeah,
so I give them basics. I mean, I'll tell your listeners, like these are the basics. Number one, fast food's not an option. Take it off the table. I don't care how busy your day was or whatever. If you remove it as an option, you make different choices. It's incredibly empowering. And these are sort of like your daily things. This is just how you live. Number two, movement every day. Every day is a movement.
Do you have like a time, or just kind of like?
It depends on the person.
I see. Yeah, I guess it would, huh?
So everybody who joins Fit Me is coached. You have a one-on-one coach. And so you're pushed wherever you're at.
Yeah.
But movement every day is part of the basics. Number three is you don't drink your calories.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know anyone who is living like an effortless, like quote effortless, but who lives a fit and healthy lifestyle who regularly drinks their calories in terms of soda, sugary drinks, or like regularly daily drinking alcohol. You're struggling with that piece. And so again, this isn't like a never, this is just how you live every day. There's going to be occasions where you deviate from this, but like this is just the basics.
Yeah.
And then the last piece, like this is, well, I guess there's two last pieces. If you wouldn't want it in your house on your worst day, don't buy it. You don't put it in your house.
Now that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge because I feel like I have pretty good discipline, but kids just want to eat bullshit. And I try and balance me being like a Nazi and then also still letting them be kids, right? Mm-hmm. So they'll get like dino nuggets from Costco, and then there'll be a tray of dino nuggets cooked sitting there.
Yep.
And before I know it, I've eaten 15 of them. It's like, what am I doing? You know, if it's in your house,
you eat it.
It takes an elite level of willpower to not eat it.
And we only have so much. And honestly, your house is your sanctuary. And this is one of those boundary things where we feel like, oh, well, I have to have X, Y, and Z. Well, you don't. And I'm not saying never have a treat. I actually encourage people to enjoy their treats. You're not cheating. Go out. Take your kids and go get ice cream sundae. But if you know every night that you're stressed out from work, you're going to tap into that ice cream, don't put it in your house.
Yeah.
That's your worst day. And like, don't imagine you're going to count out 7, crackers, your favorite cracker from Trader Joe's. You might on a good day. On the day you don't give a crap, you're going to eat the whole thing.
You can say fuck. You almost said fuck. I heard it.
I stopped myself. But I think that's a basic that people don't hear because in the if it fits your macros world or in the diet industry, they want to make everything fit, right? Like, oh, you can have this in your cupcake. Oh, just have a little bit of moderation. You just need more discipline. You just need more motivation. When actually what people need are a different set of guidelines. This is how I live. Like, I live this way every day because I feel good, not because I'm on a diet. And then the last piece of the basics that we teach people is how to build a healthy plate. And it's nothing epic. It's just you take part of your plate, you fill it with veggies. The next you add a protein. Then you add some healthy fat and a quality carb from the ground. That's it. It's a fit me plate. That's what we call it, a fit me plate. And we have a game to help you get your first 100. And that's a free game. So people in my Facebook group just play this game. And
what do you mean to help you get your first 100?
100 plates. So we count them. So again, this sounds so dumb because it's like, oh, well, duh. But nobody does that. Nobody eats a plate that has veggies, a quality protein source, some healthy fat, and a little bit of quality carb. Nobody eats like that. So then when you start to eat like that, well, then all of a sudden you're not playing diet game anymore. If you go out to a restaurant and you're trying to eat healthy, well, you know how to build a plate. You order the fish, it comes with rice, you got some veggies, and you're done. Yeah. You could do this literally anywhere. And in your house, instead of thinking, oh my God, how am I got to go to Pinterest and get some like healthy recipes, you just know how to build a plate. So it sounds so silly, but these basics work. But it's not as easy as just knowing them. It's doing them consistently and having support and encouragement and people who care. But yeah, like we don't need all the diet bullshit.
I love that though, because you said basics work, and basics work in everything. Basics work in jiu-jitsu. Basic works in combat tactics. Like, everybody's trying to reinvent the wheel all the time. And sometimes if you just go back to take mount and arm bar, you win fights. You know what I mean? So I think that's a good approach to it. And also something that people can understand and something that's more sustainable, you know?
And your kids can copy you. Like, if you have to eat something totally different from them, again, professional athletes, or if you've got some sort of specific need excluded, if you're just trying to get a healthy lifestyle,
it should be a family endeavor.
It should be, right? If you're trying to eat healthy and your kids are still eating all the bullshit in the pantry all day long, again, a little bit in there is probably normal, but if you're doing something totally different, then there's room to grow there. And I'm not saying like throw everything out. I mean, you could, but I think just say like, oh, well, there's nothing wrong with eating that food. It's not like labeling it as immoral, but just say, our bodies don't feel very good when we eat Doritos every day, so we're not going to buy them. But if you're at the barbecue and they're giving out Doritos, who cares? Like, they can have Doritos. Yeah. So it's just kind of moving the needle for your family. You can't do it for them. But I think when we start to decide like, oh, I'm not doing just another diet, I actually want to be different and feel different, then it's easier to get your people on board.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, we just burned through 2 hours.
I know. crazy.
I think you might need to start being a regular guest.
I started amping up.
Yeah, I know. All right. So before we go, I said that I'd put your information in like the show notes, but just give your website and your Instagram.
The best way to like either follow me or get up with me is to follow my Instagram. So at Christy May Campbell. So it's ChristystYMae Campbell, like the soup, CAMPBELL. So I try to put as much realness on Instagram as I can. And then the next best way to kind of like plug in with me is I do a daily podcast. It's 5 minutes every day. It's called Fit Me Coffee Talk. Okay. So if you like podcasts, and some of these messages kind of hit, it's just me drinking coffee in the morning, but kind of giving a perspective shift on the day.
That's why you sound like a professional. I'm only 18 episodes in. I'm a fucking noob.
Yeah, but yours are longer. Mine are only 5 minutes. So we're probably at about the same amount of time. But this is just literally a chat, a 5 minute of like, hey, take this into your day, and your day is going to be just a little different than it would have been.
And are those hosted on your own website?
Yeah, so just look Fit Me Coffee Talk on any podcast platform. Okay. They're there. Yeah. Cool. I actually just rip them on Facebook Live and then convert them to an audio and publish them. They're nice. Like not produced. It's super raw and just whatever is out there. Well, cool. I talk about my coffee for a minute.
All right. Well, you got anything else then? Any pertinent information you need to put out before we wrap this up? No, I guess if I didn't say my website, but you can put it in the show notes, fitmenutrition.com. Okay. Well, yeah. You just said it. There you go. All right. Well, that was awesome. This was really fun. Yeah. Thanks for coming. And I already want to have you back on. I would love to. That was a lot of good stuff. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we're at the 2 hour mark, so that's going to be a wrap. Thanks for listening. And until next time, we're out.